Hola muchachos, ¿qué tal? Buenos días. Aquí tienen el horario para hoy, viernes, el 19 de agosto. So here's your agenda for today. There was no homework due for today. For next class, for next class, you guys are completing, and actually you're going to do it today in class, a series of games practicing actually not just AR conjugations, but AR, ER, and IR verb conjugations. And that's going to be one of our daily objectives for today. Understand the parts of a verb, the steps to conjugating, and why it's a necessary process. And then also to continue to become familiar and comfortable with the vowel and consonant sounds in Spanish. Here's our to-do list for today. First, as always, your warm-up. ¿Cómo se escribe tu restaurante favorito? So similar to the previous two warm-ups, you guys are using the sounds of the Spanish alphabet to spell out the name of your favorite restaurant, whatever restaurant that may be, in whatever language that may be in. So for example, mi restaurante favorito es Mecca. I grew up in Pittsburgh, downtown Pittsburgh, right near the marina, and the Mecca is my favorite restaurant. Se escribe M E C C A. Again, becoming familiar and comfortable with the sounds of the Spanish alphabet. After you guys are done with your warm-up, you guys are going to go into modules and click on the Gramática Repaso present tense of regular verbs. And that's on page 9 of your textbook as well. So earlier this week, we went over the Spanish alphabet. You guys practiced playing a few online games, how to make the sounds of the Spanish alphabet, an interview activity. Some of you have done the quiz already, the spelling test. I've not assigned that yet, so you don't need to worry about that. And then last class, we went over the adjectives. Adjective agreement between agreement between nouns and adjectives. Agreement in both gender, masculine, feminine, and number, singular, plural. And then we looked at the verb ser, which is the verb to be, and how that verb is conjugated. You guys did some practice activities out of the textbook. So today, again, just kind of going over the basics in this module, and you can see we'll be doing that continuing into next week as well, is conjugating, the present tense of regular verbs. It's on page 9 of your textbook, and I've also created this page for you as a good review. So the most important grammar concept you guys learned last year in terms of how fundamental it is and integral it is to intermediate Spanish, which is this year, and then advanced Spanish, if you guys continue on to next year, which I hope you do, is this concept of conjugating. And you guys have only learned to conjugate in what's called the presente indicativo, which is the present tense, talking about the here and the now. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to go through this PowerPoint here and take notes on the essential parts of a verb, which you see them there, which are called the infinitive, the stem, and the ending. And then also take notes in this PowerPoint on the steps to conjugating a verb. So I'm going to pull up that PowerPoint here and just walk you through it very briefly. So I think we're focusing first on AR verbs. Those tend to be the most basic or the most fundamental, commonly used. But before we get into AR verbs, what are the three parts to a verb? So as I outlined there a moment ago, the first is what we call the infinitive. And basically the infinitive is the basic unconjugated form of the verb. Unconjugated. So in English, examples of infinitives would be the verb to do, or to speak, to work, to sing. Examples of infinitives in Spanish: hablar, to speak; caminar, to walk; escribir, what you're doing right now. So the verb to write. Escuchar, to listen. So an infinitive is what? A verb in its basic unconjugated form, ending in AR, like hablar; ER, like leer or entender; or IR, escribir, vivir, or just the verb ir, the verb to go. So that's what you start off with, is what's called the infinitive. And again, the infinitive is always going to end in AR, ER, or IR. There you have some examples. Second part to a verb in Spanish is what we call the ending. Ending is essentially the last two letters of the infinitive, and as I just shared with you, those endings can be AR, ER, or IR. That's how we categorize Spanish infinitives, being AR, ER, or IR verbs. So we have the infinitive, which is just the basic unconjugated verb. We have the ending, which are the last two letters. The endings in Spanish can be either AR, ER, or IR. And then finally, we have what's called the stem. And the stem or the root is essentially whatever is left over when you remove the ending from the infinitive. The stem or the root is what we could otherwise refer to as the prefix, right? The base of the infinitive. So start with the infinitive, remove the ending, and you're left with what's called the stem. Stem or the root of the infinitive. So running that back, the three parts to a verb, this will be the first question on your first exam. The infinitive, and be able to give me some examples of infinitives. Hablar, correr, dormir are all examples of what? Infinitives. The ending, or the last two letters of the infinitive. So for the example infinitive estudiar, that would be an AR infinitive, yeah? And then the stem is essentially whatever's left over when you remove the ending from the stem. Conjugation. What does it mean to conjugate? That's another one of our objectives for today. To conjugate is to put a verb in its correct person so we know who's doing, correct person and number, so we know who's doing the action. If you just say hablar, I have no idea as to who you're talking about, right? You need to conjugate the infinitive. You need to remove the ending from the infinitive and add to the stem your present tense endings in this case, so that we know who's doing the action. Yo hablo. Hablo, that O ending, is a conjugation. And it tells me that I'm the person, or it communicates to somebody else that I'm doing the speaking. Hablamos. Nosotros hablamos. We speak. Tú hablas. Tú hablas español. Do you speak Spanish? Hablo, hablas, hablamos. Those are all what? Conjugations. Taking a verb and it's an infinitive, hablar, and changing it, conjugating it to the correct person, first, second, or third, and number, singular or plural, so that we know who's doing that action, whether it's hablar, caminar, escribir, escuchar, etc. That's the process that you guys learned last year that we want to master at the very outset, because we're going to learn different tenses this year. You guys are going to do the past tense, so you can talk about what you did over the weekend or earlier in the day. You're going to use the imperfect tense, so you can talk about what you used to do when you were a kid or when you were younger. You're going to learn the future tense, so you can talk about your future goals and aspirations. But all of those tenses are based upon or follow the same steps of conjugating, just different endings. So it's really important that you guys are comfortable and knowledgeable with this process. We're going to do a little practice with AR verbs. And regular AR verbs, as you can see, there are a myriad of examples here. They all follow the same steps to conjugating. Let's take a look at those. So we're going to use the classic example, hablar, right? That's our infinitive, hablar. And we're going to go ahead and follow those initial steps, remove the AR ending, right? We're left with what's called the stem. And there you can see the stem of hablar. And then we're going to go ahead and add to the stem the present tense endings of AR verbs. And you'll recognize these. O, as, a, amos, ais, and an. O, as, a, amos, an. O, as, a, amos, an. Those are our regular AR endings in the present tense. And we use these endings for any AR verb. Now I want to talk about vosotros here. I think we talked about it briefly last class. Vosotros, again, used almost exclusively in Spain, not in any of the other 20 Spanish-speaking countries in Latin America, North America, Central America, South America. And for that reason, you guys do not need to worry about the vosotros conjugation. I will not teach it to you. If you want to study it and become familiar with it, you're welcome to, but it is not a requirement for our class. Just because the Spanish that you're going to come across more than likely will not include the vosotros. So yo hablo is I speak. I'm conjugating the verb hablar to indicate what? Who's doing the action of the verb? In this case, me. Yo hablo, I speak. Tú hablas, you speak. Él, ella, usted habla. He, she, or you polite speaks. Usted is formal, a demonstration of politeness. Tú is informal, both of them translating to you. Usted means you, and so does tú, but usted is more polite. Nosotros hablamos, we speak, and ellos, ellas hablan, they speak. Ustedes hablan would be you plural. You'll hear me use the ustedes form a lot because I'm talking to all of you, all 30 plus of you. And then as you can see, like the verb trabajar, we start off with the same steps, right? Start with the infinitive, drop the ending, the AR ending, and you're left with the stem, and then add those same AR endings. O, as, a, amos, an. Trabajar is the verb to work. So yo trabajo would mean I work. Tú trabajas would mean you work. He or she works. Él, ella trabaja. Nosotros trabajamos. We work. And ellos, ellas, ustedes trabajan. They work, or you plural, you guys work. Same thing with the verb buscar, which is the verb to look for. Remove the AR ending. there you have the conjugations of the verb buscar. I look for, you look for, he or she looks for, we look for, and they look for. Buscó, buscas, busca, buscamos, and buscan. And it just goes on, right? With any regular verb, any regular AR verb rather, you can see the steps. Remove the ending from the infinitive, and then add to the stem o, as, a, amos, an. Yo estudio, tú estudias, él, ella, usted estudia, nosotros estudiamos, ellos, ellas, ustedes estudian. So that's just a brief overview of that PowerPoint here. And if you guys want a little bit more coaching, there's a step-by-step tutorial which essentially is the same as what I just did with you with the PowerPoint, although it goes over ER and IR endings as well. ER verbs like the verb leer, comprender, entender, they follow the same steps, they're just different endings. And the easy way to do that, to get from AR endings to ER endings, is just switch out the A of AR verbs to an E. And you can see they're the same endings. O, S, E, emos, E-M-O-S, N. And then to go from ER to IR endings, IR verbs like the verb vivir, they're the same, right? ER and IR endings are the same with the exception of the nosotros form. Instead of hemos, it would be hemos. And these are the endings that we're going to be looking at for most of the first quarter. We're going to play bingo, conjugation, bingo next class, so you guys can become familiar with them, but we need to have them mastered and these steps mastered where you're not really having to think about it so much. It's kind of like math. You memorize the formula and you implement the formula. And this is the linguistic formula of conjugating, where hopefully you'll get to the point where you don't need to even think about which ending matches with which subject and so on. Really catchy song that I'll play for you before I go ahead and share with you what you guys got going on for the rest of today.
Nosotros hablamos y ustedes hablan. Yo hablo, tú hablas y ella habla. Nosotros hablamos y ellos hablan. Yo trabajo en la clase de matemáticas. Él estudia en la clase de inglés. Ellos dibujan en la clase de arte. Nosotros escuchamos en la clase de español. O, as, a, amos, an.
Otra vez.
O, as, a, amos, an.
Otra vez.
O, as, a, amos, an.
Otra vez.
O, as, a, amos, an.
Come on.
Pretty catchy, huh? We'll be playing that over and over and over again until you guys get just about sick and tired of it. But it's great practice for what? The regular endings of AR verbs. O, as, a, amos, an. And if you have those endings down and you know these quick tricks to go from AR to ER endings, again, just switching out the A for an E, and from ER to IR endings, essentially the same except for the nosotros ending. If you have those two clues along with the AR verb endings down, then you'll be in good shape. All right, really quickly, let's go ahead and go over what you have to do for next class. and that is to complete, excuse me, not just AR, but AR, ER, and IR verb conjugation games. Let's go ahead and click on that. You can get to that through modules as well, which is what I'm going to do. And here she is. So all you're going to do is play. Play these 3 online games to practice your mastery of AR, ER, and IR verb conjugations. Game 1, go ahead and click on. And you guys are going to take a screenshot when you guys are done demonstrating mastery. So this one's pretty simple. You just need to match the infinitive that's in Spanish with the English equivalent. So caminar, for example.
Caminar.
Not the verb to run.
Caminar.
The verb to walk, right? And so you're going to do that. You're going to do that for, I think there are 15 total. Right? You'll do new images afterward. Do a few of these and then take a screenshot again or a picture with your phone of you having completed that first game. Game 2 has to do with the verb to have and to be. We talked about the verb to be last class. That's the verb ser. You have the verb tener there. You can actually play either one, whichever one you feel like you need more practice with. Let's do the verb ser and play. So they're gonna facilitate a conversation, and depending upon to whom the person is addressing, in this case, this person is introducing themselves. So that would be just like how you guys did at the beginning of the year, right? Soy francés. I am French. Eres francés. You are French. And then he's pointing to him to say, you are German. Eres alemán. Son would be for more than one person, right? Like for example, this group of people. Soy alemán. And you guys can go back if you need to. Or that may take you to the actual, not all the way back there, but you guys can click on the game again and go back if you need to take a look at the different conjugations and listen to them and see how they're pronounced as well. All right, the last game, game 3, is a quiz on AR present tense endings. And you're going to type in the answer. So the verb hablar in the to form, start off with the stem, right? H-A-B-L. And then the to ending of AR verbs is as. Hablas. Right? The ustedes form of AR verbs, or the ustedes ending of AR verbs. And again, these are all on page 9, and in that PowerPoint that I shared with you would be an, visitan. If you want to do an accent, you just type that letter in capital letters. You can see here the key that you can utilize. And then take a screenshot when you're done with this activity, and then upload all 3 screenshots as your assignment for this particular practice. And again, I found that practice in modules right underneath the PowerPoint that I shared with you, the page, the grammar review. And that all refers to page 9. I would recommend taking a look at page 9 as well in the textbook. So that is our agenda for today, muchachos. Again, the only thing that you have to do for next class is to submit your screenshots of having successfully completed those 3 games. Wishing you all a wonderful weekend, and hopefully I look forward to seeing you all again in person next week. Adios.